Hi, good morning and good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to Tigerlily's 2025 Virtual Young Women's Health Day on the Hill webinar series. We're so excited to have you joining us today. And I'm thrilled to be here with our four amazing panelists. We're going to go ahead and dive right in because we have a lot of exciting things to talk about. So we're going to get started, but today I'm joined by Tiana Russell, one of our angel advocates here at Tigerlily Foundation, metastatic breast cancer thriver, cover model for My Life Matters magazine, all the amazing things. Tiana Johnson, who is also a Tigerlily angel advocate, metastatic breast cancer thriver. She's just a rock star advocate. And we're also joined by Dr. Angelique Richardson. She is from the University of California, San Diego, a medical oncologist, researcher, and Dr. Sandy Dunn, the founder and CEO of Phoenix Molecular Designs. All of you, I have worked with individually over the years. I'm so excited to have you here. You're just amazing people. And I think we're just going to go ahead and dive right in. And I'm going to ask Tiana Russell if you would go ahead and introduce yourself first. Because here at Tigerlily, everything we do is patient-centric, person first. And I would love for you to just share a little bit about yourself, who you are, the work you do, and why you do the work you do. So I'm going to hand it off to you, Tiana.
Thank you, Lizzie. First, I want to say I'm happy to be here on this panel. So super excited. I am Tiana Russell. I am a stage 4 thriver. I have been though, so this is my second bout of cancer. So 2019, it was stage 2, and then 2023, it was stage 4. So I've been just continuing to kick cancer's butt. I am a mom of a very rambunctious 8-year-old. And me getting into advocacy work, I started just sharing my story on social media. And then I found Tiger Lily, and I've been doing that for about 3 years, amongst other types of advocacy as well on other cancer um, organizations. And so I just really have been wanting to get into the policy side of advocacy. And so um, I'm doing good so far. So I'm here. And so I'm just really excited.
Thank you so much, Tiana. We're excited to have you here with us. Tiana Johnson, would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name's Tiana Johnson, and thank you for allowing me to be on this panel as well. I am, this is also my second bout with cancer. I was diagnosed with stage 2 at the age of 35. And then in 2022, my cancer returned. I'm now metastatic stage 4, but I'm blessed and doing well. This time around, I decided not to suffer in silence. And so one of my first introductions into the advocacy arena was through Tiger Lily and becoming a angel advocate. So I'm a mom of two teens, 11 and 14, and they keep me busy all over the place with sports and band and academics. Um, but I joined Tiger Lily because, again, I didn't want to go at this alone, and finding community, finding a voice, and being able to help others. You know, one of the things that's close to my heart is helping those who are underserved and in rural communities. So just advocacy has so many different avenues, and I'm just so glad to be a part of it. So thanks again.
Thank you so much, Tiana. We're so happy to have you here and working with us. And next, Angelique, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. So Angelique Richardson, I'm a breast medical oncologist, and I'm just so honored to be on this panel today with such amazing women. I'm just always in awe of our patients and the ones who decide to do advocacy work. So I'm just really honored about that. My interest in, so I have, this topic is right along my interest. I have for over 10 years an interest in breast cancer survival disparities and why certain women are impacted more, and also why they are more likely to not do as well on therapies or not to be able to receive therapy. So this is right along in my work that I like to do with breast cancer survival disparities. But my interest in breast cancer really started with a personal story of a very close family member that was diagnosed with breast cancer. And that was prior to me entering into medical school. And I didn't have a whole lot of knowledge except for the word cancer was something that we were really just afraid of. And we didn't know what that meant. And so I went through that journey on that side of things, and it led me to wanting to know more about how to treat this disease, and we all go into this work with research to hopefully that one day that we can find a cure, and we no longer have to have people die of this disease. And so I am so that's a story about me.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us and for the work that you do. We're so glad to have you with us today also. And Sandy, last but definitely not least, I'd like to have you introduce yourself, please.
Thank you. I'm Sandy Dunn. I am the founder and CEO of Phoenix Molecular Designs, and we're developing a brand new drug for breast cancer. But the reason that I got into all of this is because of breast cancer in my family. And so it started with my grandmother, and then my sister got it, my sister-in-law. It was so much a part of our family. And so I got into this literally 30 years ago, and just I was like the youngest reviewer for the Department of Defense breast cancer grants, and I just knew that this was the thing that I wanted to do. My grandmother, fortunately, beat breast cancer and lived to 96. And so I thought, wow, we got really lucky as a family on that score. So I thought, what if we could do this for other women? Like what if there's other cures out there that could really make a difference? And so I have just spent my life doing this, and I'm really excited to be part of this. Our drug is a pill, which is one of the reasons that I'm advocating, because I think it's really the best thing for patients. I've been at this a long time, and I know how far we've come, but we still have so much more work to do. And I feel that we're doing this for the future generations as well. And like my colleagues on the panel, I am also a mom. I have two daughters, and so I'm doing it for my daughters and for your daughters too. So that's enough about me. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you all. And like I said, you all are just amazing people individually. The work that you do is amazing. I'm genuinely thrilled to be having this conversation with you today. And I realized I didn't do an introduction either. So hi again, everyone. I'm Lizzie Wittig. I'm the director of the HEAL Policy Center of Excellence at Tigerlily Foundation. And we're excited to have you all join us today too. So if you'd like to introduce yourselves in the chat, that function is open and available. There's also a Q&A. So if you have questions during the webinar, please feel free to drop them in there so we can try to answer them at the end. I, just like my four amazing panelists here, got into this work for very personal reasons as well. My mom was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 16, and it was just the two of us. So I became her sole caregiver for 7 years after that, and quickly started realizing how hard it is to navigate a complex medical system, especially at 16. So, as we kept coming up against obstacles and hitting roadblocks, I kept pushing and asking, like, why? And finally started getting an answer about one issue in particular, that's just the law. that's what the law says. And so when I kept pushing and asking about that, I finally started asking, okay, like, well, how do we change that law then? Because this isn't working for us. And because of that, I got involved with a local advocacy organization. I ended up at my first lobby day, state lobby day up in Sacramento, California. And it was there that I realized while I was with all these other advocates sharing their stories and their experiences with the same issue, that that's really how, like, I was there for one person, right? My mom. But by changing laws and policies, that's how you impact and help thousands and millions of people. And I really fell in love with it there. And I've been blessed and lucky to be able to do this work for the past 17 years. I'm so excited to be doing it with Tigerlily and through our Heal Center of Excellence and with you all, our partners. And, my mom was originally diagnosed, she had early stage breast cancer, finished her first round of treatment, thought we were good, and she had a quick recurrence and progression to metastatic breast cancer. And we were told she had less than a year to live at that point. But my mom was able to participate in a clinical trial in research, and she lived another 6 years. So I had 6 extra years with my mom, and I wouldn't have had that if it weren't for people like all of you on here today. So just thank you for that first. And second, I've personally benefited from, as have we all, and seen the impact of research and innovation and how important it is that we continue that. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today in a specific way. So I want to just thank you again all for joining us. Before we dive in, which we're going to do here momentarily, we have a quick poll that should be popping up on your screen right now. It's just quick 4 questions. If everybody could go ahead and respond to that, we greatly appreciate it. And just, we'll wait here a couple minutes while everybody answers those questions and gets the poll going. And please remember, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. I see some of you doing that. Thank you. We'll be engaging there. And we'll just wait for just another minute. So please go ahead and respond to the poll on your screen, and then we'll get going. Okay, we see some poll responses coming in. Thank you. And this will help because we're going to start with a little bit of an overview. So if we kind of understand everybody's current knowledge and understanding of some of these things, that'll help us determine what to cover. So we just want to make sure we're tailoring this to you and getting you what you need. So this looks great. We kind of have a spread here. I'm going to keep this up for another few seconds as people are still responding. Thank you again. And just another quick reminder, the chat's open, the Q&A is open. Feel free to drop your questions in there throughout the webinar and we will get to them. All right, thank you everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to share just a couple slides. We'll try to keep this short and short and sweet. All right, there we go. So thank you again for joining us. As I'm sure you're aware, we're going to be talking specifically about the EPIC Act today. And so to talk about that, we want to talk about first the Inflation Reduction Act, because this is the legislation that this kind of all lives within. So this is a law. It was signed into law in 2022, so it's been around for a couple of years. And as the title kind of points to, its purpose is to really reduce costs and inflation for Americans. But it also looks at things like climate change, clean energy, and lowering healthcare costs. So the portion of the IRA that looks at the healthcare costs is called the Medicare Drug Price Negotiation Program. And that's what we're really going to be looking at today. So what is it? This is the mechanism within the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, that is used to try to lower prices of drugs for patients. And so it allows Medicare as a whole to negotiate prices for drugs. And that just means that they're looking at putting caps in for the amount that a patient can pay for a drug. So this isn't for all drugs, and it doesn't happen automatically or right away. You can see there kind of the schedule of how this is going to roll out starting next year. CMS and 2023 had to select the list of drugs that they found as the most expensive, and that has little quotes around it. Because there's a little bit of criticism about how those were identified and selected, especially from the patient perspective, that it wasn't included enough. And there's some examples where patients, maybe a drug is very expensive, but they have access to it through vouchers or through the manufacturer for very low cost or for free. Or with Medicare, they have, it's a very high tier drug. And so they meet their deductible for the year by February or March, and then they're not paying for it for the rest of the year. There's a lot of different things that come into play in the real world that are important to patients and those people using the drugs, because it affects the actual out-of-pocket cost for patients. So that's why that's there. But we're going to be talking about this a little bit more today and how this works. So currently, the Medicare Drug Price Negotiation Program, the piece that we're going to focus on, differentiates between pill form drugs and IV or other form drugs. And that's what we're going to focus on here to start. So this is referred to often as the pill penalty. And like, what is this and what does it mean? So this differentiation is between small molecule drugs and large molecule drugs, which is kind of the scientific way to say pill drugs and IV and other form drugs. And the title or classification of small molecule versus large molecule is literally talking about the size of the molecule used in that compound or drug. And so for us in the oncology and cancer space, this is really important when we talk about chemo, because then we know we have oral chemo or pill form chemo and IV chemo, where you have to go into infusion center and have an IV put in, and it's usually over several hours. And these are very different ways to receive treatment. And there's also many other drugs besides chemo, but that's kind of what we're going to be talking about quite a bit. So what happens and how the drug price negotiation works is once a drug comes to market and is FDA approved, it is protected for a little bit of time before the drug price negotiation can start on it. And this is so that the manufacturers and the developers have some time to recoup the money that they've spent in the investment in bringing that drug to market, so that they can reinvest that money into new additional innovation, continued research, things like that. And so right now, this is the case for all drugs, but right now the difference between pill form and IV form or other forms of drugs is the amount of time that they have before that drug price negotiation can start. And so for pill form drugs, there's only 9 years that they're kind of protected from that. And for IV form drugs or other drugs, large molecule drugs, it's 13 years. And this kind of disparity in the amount of years has led to an unintended consequence that patients are really having to bear the brunt of. And that's disincentivizing continued research and innovation for those small molecule drugs or the pill form drugs. And because of the time difference there. So this means that there is going to be less oral chemo options available for patients, the bottom line, and what we're really talking about here, and other drug types too. But we know that oral chemo offers many meaningful benefits to patients over IV forms around autonomy, quality of life, and we're going to dive into that a little bit more, and you can see the list there on the screen, so I'm not going to go through all of that. But cost of care, cost of time, all these different things come into play here. And so it's really concerning for patients and our community to think that there is this disincentive unintentionally in the current law that would make manufacturers and researchers focus on one form of treatment that is less beneficial to patients. So that's what we're really going to be talking about and diving in here to today. So, I talked about innovation, new research, but also continued research. So we know in the past 6 years, 61% of new cancer drugs have continued research to be indicated or have uses for different purposes. So maybe a lung cancer drug was developed and then later was discovered it works for breast cancer. That's a real example of a very, very large drug use in our space, things like that. And then 22% of those go on to have 3 or more indications or uses. So that continued research is really important, just as the new innovative research for new treatments is. It brings hope, it brings life-saving drugs to the market for patients to be able to access. And there have been studies already that have shown, and these specific data here is from the specific study at the University of Chicago that we'll share the link with you for. But it's already shown that there's going to be nearly 80 fewer pill form drugs and nearly 200 fewer treatment indications because of this law over the next 20 years. And not only does this discourages research and development, especially for new uses of existing drugs, as I was talking about, that continued research for those second, third indications. But also, this doesn't affect just Medicare patients. 40% of the drug classes with the negotiated prices rely heavily on Medicare sales, meaning that's the majority of the group that purchases them or uses them. And this can lower the prices of Medicare, which may reduce the generic competition, which will lead to higher prices for private insurance patients. So again, even if you're not a Medicare patient, this could affect you. And there's already real world impact happening. You can see there companies that have already canceled drug programs, research programs, citing this small provision in the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, as the reason why. And surveys within those companies, 95 of them showed that they expect to develop fewer new treatments due to this law. So a really important, significant impact here that we're talking about. So what's the fix? This is what we're here about today. We want to talk about the EPIC Act. This would simply change that time frame so that small molecule drugs, the pill form, and large molecule drugs, IV form, would have the same amount of time of protection from the drug price negotiation program, that they would each have 13 years, that it would match. And that would fix the problem. There'd be no extra disincentive or incentive to research one over the other. And this would make a real difference in the life of patients. And that's it. The fix is easier, less complicated than the issue to start with. And is something that, we're going to be discussing here at further length. For those of you who have heard of this or kind of following or want to know more about the EPIC Act specifically, it's been introduced in both the House and the Senate. You can see by representatives both from North Carolina and some of the information there, but it's continuing to move through both sides. And so this is why we're talking about this. This is a great time for all of us to be engaging, sharing our voices, and supporting this. And this is something that we can continue to support and hopefully be signed into law this year. The other part of our webinar today was going to be looking at orphan cures and the Orphan Cures Act. This, thankfully, we have a very exciting, happy update about this, but I'm going to just quickly touch on this. It's a very similar issue, but orphan drugs are drugs that are used for rare diseases, and rare diseases are those that affect 200,000 people or less. And so, and looking at that, it's the same thing. The Medicare drug price negotiation program within the IRA protects these orphan drugs or rare disease drugs from the negotiation because they're so expensive and there's so few people compared to other large diseases that take them, to make sure that the research is still incentivized in them. But there was a small provision in the drug price negotiation program that said once one of those drugs had a second indication, even though it was still for a rare disease, the second use, like we talked about, a drug for lung cancer becomes for breast cancer, it would lose that protection. And so then that was a disincentive for that continued research specifically for rare disease drugs. This is important because not only to our community, because not only are there rare diseases that are cancers, but also the most common side effects from anti-cancer treatment, things like neuropathy, liver disease, kidney disease, those are considered rare diseases themselves. And 95% of rare diseases don't even have an FDA-approved drug on market available for them. So this was a similar issue with a small provision in the Medicare drug price negotiation. So Thankfully, Orphan Cures was signed into law last week on Friday, July 4th, and that changed that provision. So now when a rare disease drug has a second indication, it's still protected. There's no disincentive, and we can continue, pushing research and innovation forward and bringing hope to so many patients. A very small but great win here that we want to talk about. And we basically want to do the same thing with the EPIC Act. And I do want to take a moment, just the two graphics on the screen, to honor these two advocates that started supporting and really leading our advocacy work on this issue last year, Catherine Jackson and Natalie Del Pecci. You can read both of their stories and see their videos on our website. But they started this work last year, and both were living with metastatic breast cancer and didn't survive to see the law pass last week, but we have continued their work and their legacy, and we are celebrating it in honor of them. And so I just wanted to make sure we took a minute to honor them here, thank them for their work, and then thank the four of you here today, our panelists, to do this work with us. So I'd really love to start off Tiana Johnson and Tiana Russell with both of you to really talk about, with the EPIC Act and this pill penalty, like your perspective as a patient, what that means to you, what that looks like for you, what your experiences have been. So I will open it up to both of you now.
I can start off if it's okay, Tiana. You have such a lovely name. The EPIC Act, it actually, and I'm speaking from someone with stage 4, there's no cure for me. And so every line of therapy that I receive or am available or is available to me it's life or death for me, because once the therapies end, then I have nothing else to turn to. So for me, because I have a finite amount of options, it is definitely impactful when they don't put the research into pill form because of financial reasons. I just don't want my options to end because of finance, as opposed to just not having the science. Another way for me is financially. I was a victim of, well, I'm not a victim, but I did experience losing my funding from a savings card, which helped me to pay for my cancer medication. They stopped funding it. And so I will say that there are times I've gone without my medicine because I have to choose, am I going to pay my mortgage and can my children eat? Or am I going to take the pill? And I'm going to choose my children every time. I shouldn't have to do that, but it's reality. And then when you have to go in for infusions because you can't do them at home, you have to be monitored because they're very toxic. You lose time from work. I still work full time, and I've even tried to pick up a second job for financial reasons. You lose time from work, and then you have to recover from those infusions and the medications that you receive to combat the side effects of the infusions. Now, with the pill form, you do have side effects, but they're manageable. They're more manageable. My kids will sometimes say to me, "Mom, I forget that you're sick," because on the pill form, I can function. When I was on the IV medication, my kids at the time were so young, they thought I was playing a game, but I literally had to crawl from room to room to get things done because I was wiped out, but I still had things that needed to get done. And I would spend so much time in bed. So having the pill form gives you more autonomy. It makes you feel more normal in a situation where your body isn't the same anymore. And I'm sure that Tiana could speak to some of that as well.
Yes, I definitely can. As I mentioned prior, my stage 4 diagnosis started in 2023, and I started with the pill. But when I had a reoccurrence, I was the next option was IV chemo, which I've been on for a year, so 2 years in December. So like you said, Tiana, it's more manageable. My son didn't even know I had cancer until I knew that the drastic change of me physically was going to change for him and how I parent and all of the things. And so the pill penalty is very frustrating because we have very limited pill options versus the IV option. And so just being a thriver, and it's not about if you will have a reoccurrence, it's just when. And so it's just really frustrating to have an insurance company that will be more it makes your options harder financially and physically, and it doesn't we already are fighting for our lives. We shouldn't have to fight for insurance to even um say that we can have the drug, because who are you to say that my life is to me saying my life is not that important to you? So that's my input on how important um, the Penalty Act is.
And it also, you know, when you have cancer at any stage, it's continually experiencing loss. It's continually, it feels like something's constantly being taken away from you. And so that's why I want to lift up my voice now, because, people don't consider the emotional, the mental aspect, the toll that it takes on your family, because they go through this with you. And the self-image, the way you appear when you're on the IV medications as opposed to the pill form. I was telling one of my doctors the other day, I had to have surgery because insurance didn't want to continue to pay for medication. So then I had to have a surgery. And I told him, I said, I feel like Frankenstein, because people are more focused on the dollar amount and their bottom line than opposed to how this actually impacts a human being. So I just, if they could just give equal investment to both drugs, I mean, people will live and they'll have options to live. And I think having options is what makes me smile the most in a situation where you don't always have options. So,
Absolutely. It's that hope, right? And that's what they
yes.
can represent. You both brought up some really amazing points I just want to touch on again for a second. It's more than the side effects, right? It's your mental, your physical health, your image, your family, and how you can interact there. All of those things, I think we neglect to remember that those are just as important as the how effective the drug is, or you know, the surviving that quality of life, really. So thank you both for bringing that up, and I really love what you were saying, Tiana Johnson. Well, both of you touched on this, but the financial toxicity piece of it, we talked about this before today. It could be a whole another webinar for several hours, but um, we want drugs to be affordable and accessible for patients, but it doesn't really matter if a drug's going to be affordable or not if it doesn't come to market, if it's not available for patients. So, both are equally important, and we want drugs that patients can afford, but we also want and need research and innovation to continue, because so many, like you were saying, they're waiting for that next innovation, that next new drug. Um, so thank you both so much. I really appreciate you sharing your experiences and thoughts about that. Um, I want to turn now to Sandy. We get, we hear and have a lot of times the perception of big pharma, right? And that That's who's developing drugs and bringing them to market, and they have billions of dollars anyway. Like, why does this matter? Why do they need to have money? And it's important. And we think about the millions of dollars and the years and decades it takes to bring a drug to market. And like we were just saying, we have to have these new drugs for patients to stay alive. But you have a really great, unique perspective that I think we need to remember and make sure we're including in these conversations. So I'd love to hear from you about this as like a small biotech company.
Thank you. I think what a lot of times people don't realize is that the innovation often starts with little companies like ours. And it's that foundational work, and it's the deep roots of doing the hard research and really pushing innovation forward. And then eventually the large pharmaceutical company comes along and they say, oh, well, we'd like to buy your technology. So many, I mean, so many drugs are developed by small biotech companies like ours that have to scrape and fight to raise the money for all of the clinical research development costs. Our company pays for all of the costs on our clinical trial. It's on us. And why do we do it? Because it matters. You mentioned in our pre-call about the idea of a lily pad, and that we need to have innovation so that when a drug isn't working anymore for a patient, that they have something new to turn to. And that's so important. And when we think about the way that this system works, big pharma has to really rely on us, on smaller companies, because I think like I said, a lot of that innovation, people don't really understand the origin story for a lot of drugs, but a lot of them started with tiny little companies that really had a deep understanding and a commitment to really push through. So I think that's important for people to know. I got really involved in advocating for the EPIC Act. I've written to my representatives, as you know, and I'm really passionate about this because it's also about the patient experience. It's about what patients go through, and um, the idea of having a pill is obviously a lot more convenient. As someone who's involved in drug development, it's also important to mention that it's actually less expensive to make a drug that's a pill compared to a complicated IV drug such as an antibody drug conjugate. And I think they're all important for different stages of a cancer patient's life. But I think that we want to come away with, we all want a better, more efficient system. Let's face it. I think we all want the same thing. Like we need a better system overall. But I think that we're missing the point that small molecules or pills are actually less of a burden on the healthcare system overall. You don't have the monitoring, right? Like you don't have the IV infusion clinic. You don't miss 8 hours of work. When my mom was going through metastatic cancer, I went to IV clinic with her. It was all day. It was all day long. And so it's impossible to work and to carry on with your life in a normal way. So I think that those are really important aspects to think about. And then Lizzie, you made a good point earlier about the reinvestment in innovation and technology. So those 4 years at the end of the price protection that's also that 4 years is at the height of when the companies are able to recoup their costs so that they can recycle it back into innovation. So it's kind of like an airplane taking off, and you're up at cruising altitude, you've got those last few years, and that's where you want to really be able to innovate and to create a new lily pad for patients. So I think that that's really important to keep in mind. And so it's I think that's really all I have to say, is just that a lot. Oh, and one other thing is that in looking into this, 90% of breast cancer therapies that are out there today are pills. They're pills. And so it wasn't like that when I started 30 years ago. We have definitely moved the field forward. That's been great. So I think it's obviously we've headed in the right direction. Survival for patients is longer and better than it ever has been. So we've seen so much progress, but we have to keep going. Just last year, 600,000 women in the world died of breast cancer. It's it's we're not done. There's so much more work to do. And so I just want to say that this is an important piece of legislation that impacts lives and the bottom line, which is dollars for the overall healthcare system. So with that, I think that today's an important day for us, and I hope we'll get the message out for others to advocate.
Thank you, Sandy. That's yes, so important. And like you said, the bottom line might be dollars in the business sense, but bottom line for all of us is the impact on patients. And I know you're committed to that. And just thank you again for your work there, and your advocacy and engagement specifically for the Epic Act.
Oh, you're welcome. And one other thing I wanted to point out, because I think that people don't sometimes understand, is that often when we're developing pills, it's not actually chemo anymore. So we're trying to get away from chemo. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get at targeted therapies that actually go after a particular protein in your cancer and not every cell in your body. And so those pills are targeted therapies mostly. And so that's a really, really, really big distinction, because that's why you don't have the side effects with the types of side effects that Tiana Russell and Johnson both talked about. The reason that you don't see the hair loss with a lot of the pill form of breast cancer therapy is because it's targeting specifically the proteins that are controlling the cancer, and not every cell in the body. So just important to remember that. As a researcher, I always think it's key for people to really understand, like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? And thank you for sharing your experiences. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Lizzie.
Thank you. Yeah, that is a very important part. Targeted therapy where we can target the bad cells and not kill all the good cells too at the same time. And important to progress and innovation as well. Thank you again, Sandy. Angelique, I want to come to you now. As a provider, a breast cancer, oncologist, and researcher, you've done amazing work there as well. What is your perspective on the pill penalty? What do you see the impacts that are affecting your patients in general and health equity more largely?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So I agree with both of what Tiana's have said about the manageable side effects. I think that's really important, and that can't be understated, because when we think about our treatments, especially when it's in the metastatic setting, and we're hoping, we know that we'll have to go from therapy to therapy. We need to make sure that some of these side effects, they don't just end when some of the therapies end, particularly with chemotherapy. Chemotherapy, there's a lot of toxicities that carry on even past stopping that drug, which can impact what you're able to do in the next line of therapy. We have fewer of those things with oral therapies. It's mostly with many of our oral therapies. We have some of those side effects. They tend to be more manageable, but also they tend to end after a while, after stopping the therapies, which is helpful. And also, we're able to preserve more organ function as well, and that helps us with being able to offer more therapies. But I also want to point out something else that is really important to mention. These oral therapies they're changing the game of how we treat breast cancer. I mean, I think about things like CDK4/6 inhibitors. For a long time, we were using just IV chemo, and we weren't like moving the needle on improving survival. But after we have these pill therapy for the first time in, over decades, we actually were able to allow women to live longer, longer and better. So, when we think about it, it's not just the toxicity, which is important, but we're actually helping people live longer with these therapies. We're also now with the same therapy helping women, fewer women to have recurrences, metastatic recurrences. So these treatments are also, giving us better treatment options. So that's why it's so important that we continue to innovate in these areas for that reason. And then also, when I think about these sort of therapies, I think about our underrepresented minority populations, our rural populations. They have difficulty coming into the infusion centers for infusions. There's costs with travel. They can't take off of work. They're either the primary breadwinner or they need a two-family income. So these oral therapies allow for those women to still be on treatment and not have to skip treatment or delay treatment because they can't come in. So it's so important for so many reasons that we continue to do the work in this area.
Thank you. And it's so important, and thank you for bringing those up. And I remember us talking about previous to today, we talked about kind of redefining, and we have at Tigerlily talked about this before too, but redefining affordability and exactly what you were just saying. Like, yes, it is a cost. Like, you have to have the money to pay for it, but it's time off work, time from your family, traveling, bus, parking fees, like all that comes into play. And so I know you do a lot of work. We've worked on a community advisory board before together, looking at things like that. And so it's really important and I'm glad, thank you for sharing your perspective on that and like the importance of continuing to invest in this, to move us forward for progress, because like you and Sandy have both said, the needle has moved, but not as much as it needs to. And this is how we continue to do that. So thank you. I appreciate that so much. We all do. I want to bring us all back together here for a second for our next question and kind of because I want to talk about how we all can be engaging, and you all kind of represent a little bit of a different network and community, and every single one of us can engage in this, right? And so Tiana and Tiana, you guys just participated in our virtual Hill Day where you met with legislators, shared your stories, talked about this, asked them to support this. I should have made a note on the slide, but we've had 7 new co-sponsors since then. So, if that stuff works. Sandy, you talked about sending a letter. Angelique, you're on webinars like this talking about this. So I'd love to hear from you guys. Tiana and Tiana, what was that experience like? And what would you want to say to other patient advocates? And Sandy, same for you, for other people in your industry, and Angelique, other providers, kind of from all perspectives. But Tiana and Tiana, let's start with you.
I would say so. This was my first Heal Day, so it was very exciting, a little nerve-wracking, but it was very like in a comfortable space where I felt comfortable to be able to share my story and the importance, and also to get the feedback on what the leaders that are responsible for putting in their vote, like what their input is, and are they supporting it and things like that. So it was very and eye-opening and all of those great things. So it was really nice. I want to be able to participate in more Heal Days like in person. So it was a great first experience.
I agree with Tiana. So I've done in person, and then this one was virtual. And so that right there lets you know that you can do these things virtually if you're not able to travel. It was a great experience. And I too was a little nervous because I've never really been into politics. But one thing that I mentioned and I had to remember is that I don't know everything about policy and law, but I know my story. And so I was able to tell them my story. I'm an expert in that. And just to have someone listen, and it's our right. I mean, we vote for these people and they're making decisions about our lives. And so, I mean, it's our right. So it was very empowering. And I encourage people to participate, even if you don't do it at the federal level, in your local government, within your churches, like become involved in small steps and seek out those opportunities because it's okay to have your voice heard. So, um, I don't know. Did you feel empowered after your experience, Tiana?
I definitely did. Because like you said, I had no experience in like politics, and that's what made me so nervous to even start um
Yeah.
getting into this different part of advocacy. And so I was like, yeah, it wasn't as scary after you, but for people that are maybe afraid, like Tiana said, start small. You share your story with friends, social media, whatever is more comfortable for you. And that's just the start of your advocacy. Me with this being my first one, I did go onto social media and tell people about it. It starts within your state first before you can go national or globally. So those would be the type of things that I would encourage people that are wanting to get into advocacy and things like that.
I love that so much. Thank you both so much. And it people not only should hear your voice, like you said, Tiana, but they need to. They have to. This is so great. And I just wanted to ask you about your experience when you were talking about the Epic Act and the pill penalty. Did you feel well received? Did people understand it and be like, yeah, that makes sense? Or what was your experience there?
For me, I felt well received. I could tell one person had something else they wanted to do, but overall, um, it was nice to be heard, and it felt like that they were actually engaged and they wanted to know what it was about. So that was very encouraging.
Um, I think for on my call, it was important. The person that was representing said, well, they know about the act and, very knowledgeable about it. But I think putting a face and a story to the bill is what helped.
Absolutely. Like numbers and all that are important, but the story is what's going to hit home and what they're going to remember. And I was lucky enough to get to join a couple calls with all you ladies throughout the day. And yeah, this just seemed like it made sense to everybody we talked to. They understand. They were like, I don't know why it's like that. Yeah, that seems like a great fix. So um, thank you both for sharing about that. Sandy, I know you also you wrote a letter and you got involved, kind of similar to Tiana and Tiana. What was that experience like with you? Would you encourage other people to do that? I just would like to hear from you about it.
So first of all, I share that I am not a politician. I have no training in politics at all. And I sort of just, it was one of those things where you just said, what if I don't say anything? Like I can't just sit back and say nothing because it does matter. And so I wrote the letter to our representatives. I got really involved with No Patients Left Behind. They helped me with my letter, which was really great. So many back and forths. It was so helpful. And so, I think partnering with advocacy groups too really is a great way to bring this together. So I worked with No Patients Left Behind. I worked with Incubate as well, which is a lobbying group on the Hill. And I use social media. Again, you find yourself always sort of like pushing yourself, getting a little out of your comfort zone, but that's okay because that's how you grow. Yeah, and so then I put my letter on LinkedIn and I shared it with my professional community as well because I think that a lot of researchers and drug developers like myself, they are not they are also not versed in what is going on. And so, for us, for those of us who it's been our dream to develop a drug that could potentially, give patients more life, that's what we're about. And so I think for people to understand that we're on your side. We're on your side, and we're all in this together, and we're really working hard. And so that's why I thought, I can't be silent. I have to say something. And it is scary, but it's also so rewarding. My heart just feels like it's ready to burst when I get an opportunity to be heard. And like Tiana, both of our Tianas have talked about it, it's it very much is an opportunity to grow, which is great. So
Yeah, that's amazing. And thank you for engaging in that way, and equally encourage everyone to engage in in all spaces. But um, Angelique, Sandy just said like so many of us aren't well versed in this, and you've been engaged by here today, helping educate people, reaching out about this, sharing about this. From your perspective and kind of the clinician and provider sphere, what are some ways you see that you and your network can get involved as well?
Yes, thanks for this question because I was just listening to the stories and enjoying what both Tiana's said about their experience. And I think there's a lot of ways to get involved. When they were talking, a story came to mind about exactly what they were saying. And it was someone who he also is not, he's not a politician like everyone's saying, and he wasn't well versed in that, but he had a diagnosis of colon cancer, and he decided to go and speak to his state senator. And he said, the story was he only had maybe like 15 minutes. They were preoccupied doing other things. So he's trying to tell the pitch about the numbers and the things, and they were kind of still doing. And then he says, I have colon cancer. And then the person stops and they look up and they look at him like from their computer. And then he's like telling his story. And then they come around from the back of the desk and they actually engage with him. And then that senator goes on to like support what the bill that he was asking about, and it ended up going through, passing in that state. But it started with a personal story. He found that senator actually also had a very close family member that was just diagnosed with colon cancer. So, it's always the stories again at the end of the day that really connect. So it's so important that you share your story, although it can be difficult because to do that, but it really does move it does move things and the needle for you and for others. And so our stories are so important. So I think that's the one thing that I would say, as far as even as coming from an organization, it's always our patients and our patients' stories that are the thing, like the catalyst to change for all of these sort of issues.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you all, as providers and kind of experts in that space too, can engage also, with letter writing and testifying like your patient. And that's amazing that you were involved with that, and continuing to educate like this and bring awareness about these issues. Um, so I know we only have a couple minutes left. This went by so fast. And just, I'm so excited to be talking about this. If you guys have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. I know we do have one from before, and we did touch on it a little bit on here, but I wanted to make sure I bring it up. But it was about how this bill or the pill penalty kind of impacts healthcare costs for patients and the healthcare system overall. And we talked about a little bit, and please, all of you, feel free to respond to this. The difference in like having to go to an infusion center versus, taking a pill at home. And so maybe just if you could say a couple words, whoever would like to, about that difference and the cost difference, even for both of those, and the cost for the patient, right? Outside of just the dollars. Does anybody want to? I don't know if
I can
Angelique
speak
can.
about yeah, I can speak definitely to the cost for the patient, because We think about the infusion center appointments. So usually with IV therapies, they're more clinic visits. So there's more doctor office visits where there's co-pays associated with that, co-pays associated with infusion center. Many times you may not be able to drive yourself back and forth from these infusion center visits. So there could be costs associated with getting ride shares or paying someone to take you back and forth. Then the down days, like for you're there for half a day or maybe a full day for infusion where you have to miss that time from work. And then anywhere from 1 to 4 days for recovery. And some people are able to work and some people have to be at home during that time. And so that's all the sort of what we call financial toxicities related to that. And then some of the other side effects related to the IV chemotherapy, some people have to reduce their time at work or the ability to do certain things. And then there's costs related to that as well. So that's I can speak to the patient side of things for that.
And Sandy, I know you mentioned earlier that oh, sorry, go ahead, Tiana.
No, I was just going to say, when you think of cost for patients, it's priceless when I'm able to go to my kids' ball games, play in the yard with them, be awake enough to do homework, or go to functions. So, yes, there is a cost financially, but then there's that cost of just the love, being present, and being able to function in your life, having that quality of life while you're going through this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Oh, go ahead, Sandy. Were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say this is just so from a practical standpoint, we can scale the manufacturing of pills really fast. And so it's really scalable and actually less expensive to make than some of these more, they're cool. I mean, antibody drug conjugates are very cool, but they're hard to make. There's lots of building blocks to it. And so and I know we're up on time, so I'll just say that I think we don't want to miss the opportunity to make pills that are affordable, and can achieve the goal of extending the lives of patients. And so I think we want to kind of take a holistic look at it. And I really hope that the EPIC Act is put into law for all these reasons.
Yes, likewise. And that's a great place to start to wrap up today. We talked about ways that we all, no matter what community we're in, can get involved. I think Jacqueline put in the chat already. You all can take a first easy step today, right now. There's a link and you can just click it and it'll send a letter to your representative for you saying, please support the EPIC Act. It's editable, so if you want to add your story in, like we've been talking about, and that make it even more impactful and meaningful that way, you can, and that's amazing, and we encourage that. If you're not quite ready for that yet, you don't have to. You can just click it and send it. So super easy. Please consider doing that today before we all leave. And then we have one last poll I want to put up, but I want to thank all of you for joining us very much, and we were just so happy to have you here with us today. And thank you again to our 4 fantastic panelists. I'm so glad to do this with you today. And a special thank you to our partners and sponsors, Merck Pharma, Amgen, Pfizer, and Genentech, for giving us this opportunity to hold this webinar today and be here with you all to talk about the EPIC Act. Thanks so much, everyone.